Let me ask you something that most people are too afraid to answer honestly. In your entire lifetime, every paycheck, every bonus, every side hustle, every birthday envelope with cash inside, how much money has actually passed through your hands? Add it all up. Go back to the first time you ever earned $1, your first job, that summer you worked 16 hours a day and thought you were finally going to get somewhere. Add every single rupee, every single pound, every single dollar. Depending on who you are watching this right now, that number might be $300,000. It might be 1.2 million. It might be closer to 4 million. Now here is the question that should genuinely make you uncomfortable. How much of that is left? Not what is theoretically in a retirement account you never look at, not the number your bank app shows right before rent is due. Truly, what do you have to show for all that money that moved through your life like water through a broken pipe? For most people, the answer is devastating. And here is what makes it even more painful. It is not because you did not earn enough. Millions of people right now earn six-figure incomes and still lie awake at 3 a.m. wondering why they feel broke. The problem is not the paycheck. The problem is something much deeper, much more invisible and, once you see it, completely fixable. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on how rich people actually think. Not motivational poster nonsense, not visualize abundance advice from someone selling a course. We're talking about the real psychological architecture, the hidden systems, the mental frameworks that separate the people who build lasting wealth from the people who spend their entire lives working hard and ending up with almost nothing. And here is the thing nobody tells you. The gap between those two groups is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is not even starting capital. It is a completely different operating system running inside their heads. Stay with me, because by the time this ends, you will never think about money the same way again. Before we go any further, I need to plant something in your mind. A question that is going to sit there and pulse quietly through everything we talk about today. Right now, the richest people in the world, the ones who did not inherit it, fall into 4 categories: entrepreneurs, investors, business owners, and people who have mastered rare, highly valuable skills. What do all 4 groups have in common? They all own something. They own businesses, they own assets, they own intellectual property, they own capabilities that the market desperately needs. Now here is the disturbing part. What percentage of the world's wealthy people are simply salaried employees who worked hard and saved diligently? Almost none. Practically zero. So if the advice you have been given your whole life, get good grades, get a stable job, work hard, save money, almost never actually produces wealthy people, why does everyone keep giving it? Why does the system keep repeating it? That is the open loop. That is the thread I want you to hold onto. Because what we are about to explore is not just how to manage money better. It is about understanding why the rules you were taught were never designed to make you wealthy in the first place, and what the people who figured that out actually did differently. Think of your financial life as a game, a literal game, not a metaphor for motivation, an actual game with rules, with players at different levels, with strategies that work and strategies that do not, with beginner mistakes and advanced moves, and, most importantly, a game that can be learned. Here is why this metaphor matters. When most people think about money, they feel it emotionally. They family about debt. They feel anxiety about investment. They feel guilt about spending. They feel resentment about taxes. All of that emotion clouds their judgment. It makes them reactive instead of strategic. But walk into any room full of genuinely wealthy people and you will notice something immediately. They talk about money the way a chess player talks about the board. Calmly, analytically, with detachment. Not because they do not care, they care enormously, but because they have internalized that money is a system, and systems can be understood, optimized, and eventually mastered. The first shift, the foundational shift that makes everything else possible, is upon feeling about money to thinking about money. From being a passenger in your financial life to being the player who reads the board, understands the rules, and makes deliberate moves. Every other insight we explore today builds on that one.
So, what exactly does that operating system look like? What is actually different about the way wealthy people process financial decisions? Let us start with something called the ownership principle. And this is so simple that most people walk right past it without realizing its power. There are two kinds of people in every economy: people who own things and people who work for people who own things. Owners of businesses collect the profits of other people's labor. Owners of assets collect returns while they sleep. Owners of intellectual property collect royalties on work they did years ago. Owners of rare skills can command compensation that salaried employees can never reach because their value is not capped by an hourly rate or a corporate pay band. The working person trades time for money, finite time, time that runs out, time that cannot be scaled, time that cannot be in two places at once. The owning person deploys capital, money, skills, systems, reputation, and that capital works while they are eating dinner, while they are on vacation, while they are sleeping. This is not theory, this is structural. The wealthy do not just earn more, they have fundamentally different income architectures than everyone else. And the beautiful, slightly infuriating truth is that the architecture can be built by almost anyone willing to think differently. Now, here is where the psychology gets interesting. Most people, when they receive a paycheck, immediately think about what they need to pay and what they want to buy. The money flows out. The wealthy, when they receive money, immediately ask a different question. What can this money be turned into that will generate more money? They treat every dollar not as a reward for work already done, but as a raw ingredient for future wealth creation. This is the mindset shift from consumer to investor. And it is not about being cheap or depriving yourself. It is about building the habit of asking, before you spend anything, is this money going to work for me, or am I working for this money? Poor people see money as something to spend. Middle-class people see money as something to save. Wealthy people see money as something to deploy, to invest, to put to work. Let me make this real with numbers, because numbers are where abstract philosophy meets undeniable reality. Imagine two people. Call them Billy and Phil. Billy is 20 years old and starts setting aside $200 every single month. Phil waits until he is 30, then tries to compensate by investing $300 a month to catch up. They both stop at 60. By pure contribution, Phil saved more, $108,000 total, compared to Billy's $96,000. Phil should be ahead, right? Not even close. Assuming the average annual return of the S&P 500 over the last century, roughly 10%, Billy ends up with $1.26 million. Phil ends up with $678,000. Billy invested $12,000 less and ended up with nearly $600,000 more. That gap, that staggering, almost incomprehensible gap, is created by nothing more exotic than time and compounding.
It is the mathematical proof that starting early matters infinitely more than starting big. Now, think about the inverse. Every year you delay, every month you spend money on things that depreciate instead of things that appreciate, you are not just missing gains, you are destroying the compounding chain that future gains depend on. Here is another way to think about it. If you have $1,000 today, you are 10 doubles away from $1 million. 10 doubles. Not 1,000 steps, not 100 years, 10 strategic doublings of your money. If you have $10,000, you are 7 doubles away. If you have 100,000, you are just 3 doubles from $1 million. The entire game of building wealth, when you strip it down to its bones, is about one question. How fast can you double your money, and how do you avoid losing doubles when things go wrong? That framing alone changes everything, because it tells you that the most dangerous thing you can do financially is not making a bad investment. The most dangerous thing is going backwards, losing doubles, because every double you lose costs you not just the money you lost, but all the compounding that money would have generated going forward.
So what exactly does that operating system look like? What is actually different about the way wealthy people process financial decisions? Let us start with something called the ownership principle. And this is so simple that most people walk right past it without realizing its power. There are two kinds of people in every economy: people who own things and people who work for people who own things. Owners of businesses collect the profits of other people's labor. Owners of assets collect returns while they sleep. Owners of intellectual property collect royalties on work they did years ago. Owners of rare skills can command compensation that salaried employees can never reach because their value is not capped by an hourly rate or a corporate pay band. The working person trades time for money, finite time, time that runs out, time that cannot be scaled, time that cannot be in two places at once. The owning person deploys capital, money, skills, systems, reputation, and that capital works while they are eating dinner, while they are on vacation, while they are sleeping. This is not theory, this is structural. The wealthy do not just earn more, they have fundamentally different income architectures than everyone else. And the beautiful, slightly infuriating truth is that the architecture can be built by almost anyone willing to think differently. Now, here is where the psychology gets interesting. Most people, when they receive a paycheck, immediately think about what they need to pay and what they want to buy. The money flows out. The wealthy, when they receive money, immediately ask a different question. What can this money be turned into that will generate more money? They treat every dollar not as a reward for work already done, but as a raw ingredient for future wealth creation. This is the mindset shift from consumer to investor, and it is not about being cheap or depriving yourself. It is about building the habit of asking, before you spend anything, is this money going to work for me, or am I working for this money? Poor people see money as something to spend. Middle-class people see money as something to save. Wealthy people see money as something to deploy, to invest, to put to work. Let me make this real with numbers, because numbers are where abstract philosophy meets undeniable reality. Imagine two people. Call them Billy and Phil. Billy is 20 years old and starts setting aside $200 every single month. Phil waits until he is 30, then tries to compensate by investing $300 a month to catch up. They both stop at 60. By pure contribution, Phil saved more, $108,000 total, compared to Billy's $96,000. Phil should be ahead, right? Not even close. Assuming the average annual return of the S&P 500 over the last century, roughly 10%, Billy ends up with $1.26 million. Phil ends up with $678,000. Billy invested $12,000 less and ended up with nearly $600,000 more. That gap, that staggering, almost incomprehensible gap, is created by nothing more exotic than time and compounding. It is the mathematical proof that starting early matters infinitely more than starting big.
Now think about the inverse. Every year you delay, every month you spend money on things that depreciate instead of things that appreciate, you are not just missing gains, you are destroying the compounding chain that future gains depend on. Here is another way to think about it. If you have $1,000 today, you are 10 doubles away from $1 million. 10 doubles, not 1,000 steps, not 100 years, 10 strategic doublings of your money. If you have $10,000, you are 7 doubles away. If you have 100,000, you are just 3 doubles from $1 million. The entire game of building wealth, when you strip it down to its bones, is about one question. How fast can you double your money, and how do you avoid losing doubles when things go wrong? That framing alone changes everything, because it tells you that the most dangerous thing you can do financially is not making a bad investment. The most dangerous thing is going backwards, losing doubles. Because every double you lose costs you not just the money you lost, but all the compounding that money would have generated
But here
going
is where
forward.
it gets uncomfortable. Because understanding all of this means acknowledging something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The financial system you exist inside was not designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to make you productive. There is a difference. Banks profit from your debt. Credit card companies profit from your minimum payments. Marketing companies profit from your impulsive spending. Insurance companies profit from your fear. And 100 other industries profit from you staying exactly where you are financially, employed, slightly anxious, and reliably spending. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is just business. But it means that the default behaviors the culture pushes you toward, buy the newest phone, upgrade your car, take on a bigger mortgage than you can comfortably afford because the bank approved it, are behaviors that are very good for the economy and often very bad for your personal wealth. There is a concept called the financial matrix, the idea that the path to prosperity you were sold, good grades, good job, hard work, steady saving, was genuinely good advice for a different era. Your grandparents lived in a world of defined pension benefits, lower asset prices relative to incomes, and relatively low inflation. That playbook worked for them. It does not work the same way anymore. Inflation has quietly and relentlessly eroded the purchasing power of saved money. Pensions have disappeared. Asset prices, houses, stocks, businesses, have inflated faster than wages for decades. The person who faithfully followed all the old rules and kept their money in a savings account earning 0.1%, while inflation ran at 3 or 4%, did not keep their money safe. They slowly, silently lost it. The system changed, but most people are still playing by the old rules. And this is where the emotional trap becomes dangerous. Because when people feel financially stuck, despite doing everything they were told to do, they often conclude that the problem is them, that they are not smart enough, not talented enough, not lucky enough. They internalize the failure. The first act of financial liberation is realizing the failure is not personal. You were not taught the real rules. Almost nobody was. And the people who built wealth did so largely by figuring out, through painful experience, through mentorship, through obsessive self-education, that there was a completely different game being played underneath the surface of the one everyone else was playing. Let me tell you about the moment that changes everything for most people who eventually build wealth. It is not a dramatic market win. It is not a sudden breakthrough. It is usually a quiet, slightly humiliating collision with reality. For one entrepreneur who later built a multi-million-dollar business, that moment came at 18 years old. He needed a car to get to work. He had no savings. So he did what millions of people do every year without questioning it. He took out a loan, bought himself a reliable car, even got a nice stereo with the extra cash the bank helpfully offered him. For 3 months, life was good. Then the engine blew. No emergency fund, no backup, no safety net. And if he could not fix the car, he would lose the job that was supposed to be paying for it. So he borrowed more, which created more debt, more interest, more pressure. One bad mechanical event set him back a full year financially. That story is not unique. It is not even unusual. It is the story of millions of people who live their financial lives with zero margin for error, and then blame themselves when a single unexpected event derails everything. Here is what that story actually reveals. It is not a story about bad luck or poor planning in the moment. It is a story about architecture, about the structural absence of stability in a financial life that was built to produce income, but never built to withstand disruption. Wealthy people do not just earn more. They build margin into their financial architecture. They have buffers, backstops, contingency funds, and crisis accounts that sit quietly in the background, invisible to the outside world, waiting for exactly the moment when everything goes wrong. There is a concept called a secret crisis account. Not an emergency fund in the conventional sense, though that matters too. This is something different. An account known only to you. A reservoir of capital that exists outside your normal financial awareness. When one business was in its darkest moment, payroll due, commissions due, the main business account down to $13,000, and the company days from closing, it was this hidden account that appeared like a lifeline. Nobody knew about it. Nobody had spent it. Nobody had convinced the owner to use it for something more exciting. It just sat there, doing nothing, waiting for the one moment when it was the difference between survival and collapse. That is not luck. That is architecture. Now here is the psychological war you have to win before any of the systems matter. The war between today and tomorrow. Every financial decision you make is a negotiation between your present self and your future self. And your present self has enormous advantages in that negotiation. Your present self is here right now, feeling things, wanting things, responding to the immediate world. Your future self is abstract, theoretical, easy to discount. The way this plays out practically is what behavioral economists call present bias, the tendency to overvalue immediate rewards and undervalue future ones. And marketing companies understand this better than almost anyone. Every advertisement, every limited time offer, every one-click purchase button is designed to exploit your present bias, to make right now feel more urgent and real than 20 years from now. Wealthy people have not eliminated this tendency. They are human. They feel it too. But they have built systems that make the right long-term decision the path of least resistance, regardless of how they feel in the moment. They automate savings transfers so the money moves before they can see it and decide to spend it. They set up investment accounts that make withdrawing money slightly inconvenient. They follow spending rules, not based on willpower, which depletes, but on pre-decided frameworks that short-circuit impulsive decisions. One of the most powerful of these is a simple 3-question test for any potential purchase. First, is this an impulse or a considered decision? If it is an impulse, invoke a 7-day waiting period before buying. Most impulse purchases evaporate within a week when the emotional charge dissipates. Second, after the 7 days, are you buying for the brand or for the value? If the honest answer is the brand, if you are being seduced by marketing rather than genuine utility, walk away. Third, will this actually improve your life, or is it about status, boredom, or someone else's perception of you? Those 3 questions will save you more money than almost any investment tip I could give you. Because the wealth gap between most people and wealthy people is not primarily about investment returns. It is about the slow, invisible hemorrhage of money spent on things that did not actually need to be bought. Now let us talk about the actual structure, the blueprint. Because understanding the psychology matters, but at some point you need the plumbing. Wealthy people do not rely on a single income source. This is not an accident or a luxury of the already rich. It is a deliberate architectural choice, usually made long before they had significant wealth, that is one of the primary reasons they became wealthy. Think about income in 4 categories. The first is employment income, money you earn from working. This is linear. You work 1 hour, you get paid for 1 hour. There is a ceiling determined by your time, your skills, and what the market will pay for them. It is also fragile. 1 layoff, 1 illness, 1 restructuring, and it disappears entirely. Most people have only this. The second is business income, money generated from a system you own and operate. This is where leverage begins. A business can generate revenue from multiple customers simultaneously. It can employ other people whose labor amplifies your own. It can operate while you sleep, while you travel, while you are sick. The risk is higher, the complexity is greater, but the ceiling is dramatically different from employment. The third is investment income, returns from assets you own. Stocks, bonds, real estate, funds. This is the purest form of money working instead of you working. You deploy capital, and capital generates returns. The initial work is the deployment decision. After that, time and compounding do the heavy lifting. The fourth is what we might call residual or royalty income. Money that flows from work you did once and keep getting paid for. A book, a course, intellectual property. A system you built years ago that keeps running. This is the rarest and most powerful because it completely decouples time from income. The wealthy build across multiple of these categories. They do not abandon employment income recklessly. It funds the early stages of everything else. But they treat it as a launch pad, not a destination. They use employment income to fund investments. They use investment returns to fund businesses. They use business profits to buy more assets. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing. Now here is where it gets practical. Let us talk about the actual allocation model that makes this work. Take your income, whatever it is, and think of it as divided into 4 buckets. The first 25% is your growth bucket.
This is money that works for you. Before you pay anything else, before you make any other allocation, 25% goes toward assets, index funds, real estate, high-income skills, online businesses. The specific vehicle matters less than the discipline of the allocation. And the earlier you start, the more violently compounding works in your favor. The next 15% is your stability bucket. This is not an investment. This is insurance against the engine blowing in your car, against the medical emergency, against a job loss, against the month where everything goes wrong simultaneously. This fund should cover 5 months of your core expenses, not your lifestyle expenses, your survival expenses, rent, groceries, utilities, essential transport. Calculate that number and multiply by 5. That is your stability target. Park it in a high-yield savings account, accessible within 24 hours, earning something that at least fights inflation. The 50% is for essentials, and this is where most people are quietly hemorrhaging money they do not even notice. Not on obvious luxuries. Most people know they are overspending when they buy a luxury watch. The invisible bleeding comes from lifestyle creep, from subscriptions that accumulate unnoticed, from housing upgrades that felt affordable at the time, from car payments that felt manageable individually but collectively devour the portion of income that should be building wealth. The rule here is brutal in its simplicity. Can you live on 50% of your income? If the answer is no, the question is not how you can earn more. It is what you need to cut. Because the gap between your income and your essential expenses is the raw material of everything else. And the final 10%, and this one matters more than people expect, is your reward bucket, your joy fund, your proof to yourself that this whole exercise is not self-punishment masquerading as discipline. Vacations, experiences, great dinners, gifts, things that create memories and sustain the relationships that make life worth living. The reason this bucket matters is not just emotional. It matters because financial discipline without joy is a diet without flexibility. It might work for a few weeks, but eventually the psychological pressure builds until the whole system snaps. The reward bucket is what makes the system sustainable for decades instead of months. Once the foundation exists, once you have real assets growing, a stability buffer in place, and a spending architecture that leaves meaningful surplus every month, the next phase is expansion. And expansion does not mean just adding more of the same. It means building an ecosystem where your financial activities reinforce each other. Investment returns fund new business ventures. Business profits buy more assets. Skills learned in one context create income opportunities in another. Network built through one industry opens doors in 3 more. This is how modest starting capital eventually becomes generational wealth, not through one massive win, but through the patient, deliberate assembly of interconnected financial systems. The tax dimension of this is where enormous amounts of money are either kept or lost. And most people, because nobody teaches this, simply hand over far more than they need to. The fundamental insight is this: The tax code in most countries contains legal frameworks that benefit people who create economic activity, business owners, investors, employers, over people who simply receive wages. This is not an accident or an unfairness to be resented. It is a design choice, and it is available to anyone willing to use it. Business owners can deduct expenses that employees pay with after-tax dollars. Investors can structure gains to minimize tax drag. Retirement accounts in almost every country offer either tax-free growth or tax-deferred growth, and both are dramatically superior to paying tax on every dollar before it even gets a chance to compound. The difference between two investors who earn identical returns, where one has optimized for tax efficiency and one has not, can be extraordinary over a 20-year period. Keeping 25% more of your investment gains through nothing more aggressive than using available legal structures can result in 50% more total wealth after 2 decades. Not because you were smarter, not because you took more risk, simply because you understood the rules of
I want
the
to
game.
pause here and talk about something that gets left out of most financial advice. The part that is not about numbers. Building wealth requires years of doing things that feel strange, of living below what you earn at exactly the moment when your income finally starts to grow and every instinct is screaming at you to upgrade your life. Of watching colleagues buy things you can afford but choose not to buy. Of explaining to yourself in the quiet moments why the long game is worth it. There is a story that captures this perfectly. 2 people, same age, roughly similar incomes, standing at 20 years old. One is spending freely, the nice clothes, the social status, the appearance of success. The other is wearing cheap clothes, driving an old car, quietly investing everything they can scrape together. From the outside, the spender looks more successful. Inside the numbers, the investor already has assets quietly compounding in the background. Fast forward 2 decades. The gap between those 2 people is not a matter of a few $1,000s. It is the difference between financial stress and financial freedom. Between working because you have to and working because you want to. Between anxiety about retirement and genuine options. But here is the part that nobody tells you. The person who chose the investor path did not get there through superhuman willpower and pure sacrifice. They got there because they built systems that made the right choices automatic. They automated transfers. They created rules. They built the reward bucket so deprivation never became so crushing it broke them. They were strategic about delayed gratification rather than just grimly enduring it. Wealth is not built through suffering. It is built through intelligent design. But let me be honest with you about something, because I would be doing you a disservice if I made this sound simple. The psychological pressure of building wealth does not come only from the discipline of saving and investing. It comes from something harder to fight: comparison. You are not playing this game in isolation. You are playing it while watching everyone around you make different choices. Some of those choices look better than yours from the outside. Someone in your social circle buys a bigger house. Someone gets the car. Someone seems to be living the life while you are quietly executing the long game. The mathematical reality is that you are all at different positions in the same doubles game. The person who looks 10 steps ahead of you has made different decisions over a longer time period. Their apparent success is the compound interest on choices you did not observe. What looks like a gap in achievement is actually a gap in time and strategy. Comparing your financial position to someone else's visible lifestyle is like comparing your savings account balance to their Instagram highlight reel. It is not just unfair to yourself, it is strategically destructive. Because every time you make a financial decision based on what someone else has rather than what your own goals require, you risk losing a double. And losing doubles is the one thing the game punishes most severely. So what does the payoff actually look like? Not the fantasy version, the real version. Financial freedom is not a single dramatic moment. It is a threshold, the point at which your investment and passive income streams generate enough to cover your living expenses. When you cross that threshold, work becomes optional. Not necessarily something you stop doing. Most people who reach financial freedom continue working because they find meaning in it, but something you do from choice rather than necessity. That threshold is reachable. The math is not mythological. A person who consistently invests 25% of their income, builds a stable buffer, keeps their essential spending disciplined, and gives their investments 15 to 20 years to compound will, barring catastrophic circumstances, reach a point where their money works harder than they do. The businesses with the highest probability of success, laundromats, rental properties, self-storage, transportation, vending, senior care, all share the same structural characteristics. Simple operations, durable demand that survives recessions, passive income potential, and assets that hold real value. Not every first business makes someone a millionaire, but the right first business builds the confidence, the systems literacy, and the capital base that the second and third ventures need to compound from. The people who make it are not necessarily smarter. They are not luckier in any meaningful statistical sense. They understood the game earlier, or learned its real rules faster, and then they played it with patience and consistency that most people mistake for exceptional talent. It is not talent. It is a different operating system, and operating systems can be installed.
But I am going to leave you with one more uncomfortable truth, because I think you have earned it. Understanding all of this is not the hard part. Knowing the rules of a game is not the same as winning it. The reason most people who consume financial advice, who read the books, who watch the videos, who understand intellectually everything we have discussed today, the reason most of them still do not build significant wealth is that knowledge without implementation is just entertainment. The gap between people who build wealth and people who understand how wealth is built is not intelligence. It is execution. It is the unglamorous, repetitive, often boring work of doing the right things consistently over a very long time, while the culture around you celebrates doing the wrong things spectacularly. The system does not just create financial illiteracy, it creates financial distraction. There is always a newer phone, a better car, a sharper-looking lifestyle to simulate, and every one of those distractions is monetized by someone who fully understands the wealth game and is counting on you not to. The moment you recognize that, truly, viscerally, not just intellectually, the game changes. Here is the lesson that lives underneath every strategy, every framework, every rule we have explored today. Money is not the goal. Money is a game. And like every game worth playing, it rewards the people who take the time to understand its rules, respect its systems, manage its risks, and play it with long-term discipline rather than short-term emotion. The wealthy are not more deserving than you. They are not more intelligent. They are not operating with secret information unavailable to everyone else. They simply learned, earlier than most, or through harder experience, that the financial life you build is a direct reflection of the financial thinking you practice. That wealth is not found. It is constructed deliberately through thousands of small, correct decisions compounding quietly in the background while you live your life.
You started accumulating wealth in this game the moment you were born. Every year you play with outdated rules is a year of compounding you cannot recover. Every year you play with the real rules is a year that builds on everything that came before it. The question was never whether the game can be won. The question is when you decide to actually start playing it. But here is what I want you to sit with. We have talked about the architecture of wealth, the psychology, the systems, the mindset shifts, the frameworks that the wealthy use and nobody teaches in school. And yet none of that answers the question that sits underneath all of it. Why, if this information exists, if these patterns are documented, if the mathematical reality of compounding is undeniable, why do so few people actually do it? Is it willpower? Is it culture? Is it the design of the financial system? Is it the relentless, brilliantly engineered machinery of consumption that surrounds every moment of your life? Or is it something deeper? Something about how human beings are wired, about the stories we tell ourselves about what we deserve and what is possible, about the invisible weight of where we came from and what we were told money meant? That question does not have a clean answer, but it is the right question. And the people who eventually build wealth, regardless of where they started, are always, without exception, the ones who stopped accepting the first answer they were given and started asking it. Your financial transformation does not start tomorrow. It does not start when you earn more. It does not start when you pay off the current debt or when life gets slightly less complicated. It starts with the next financial decision you make. What is it going to be?